Right back here.
We are live. We are live. This is Senate Finance. And the chair was just commiserating about why he doesn't give breaks.
I appreciate all breaks given.
I cry. Okay. We're gonna go back to a different subject. An act relating to sustainable data center deployment. We did a quick walkthrough on this one. Not this one?
No, we did, I think there's the Senate bill. Senator
Oh,
White
okay,
has
and we
the
put
bill.
it up there because we knew there was one coming.
Correct.
Committee, this is a bill that Natural Resources would really like. Knowing, I've been looking in the various tax bills for all the things I'm getting emails about. And we don't have them yet. They are coming in the education bill, which the House may vote out on Friday, which means we'll get it maybe by the end of next week. So we'll look at this bill. The other one I've got on, I believe is 710. We looked at the S version of this. A lot, if this is very similar, a lot of it has to do with energy planning. And so we might, I think there were a few deadlines and things we had to deal with, but those are the two. And that they would like to have next door. So I've told them I would ask the committee how you feel. We are going to have,
You want to give us two bills?
I want to give, they would like two bills.
How about three? Why not
Which
make it
ones
three?
are they again? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
727, which is, no, we've got
State of the data center deployment.
727, yeah, the data center. And I believe it is this electric generating facilities, but I'm not sure. So let's walk through the H bills. And then we will have the discussion. Okay,
Great, and just as a quick reminder, the Senator White's bill was essentially a moratorium
yes,
on new data centers. But requiring the Department of the PC to do the reports, do the studies, the other state agencies.
Right.
To come back, kind of how these facilities should be regulated. So we'll go through H 727 and just to provide a little bit of context, maybe before we get into the bill itself, some of the physical and operational requirements of data centers and why the bill is structured the way it is. So what is an AI data center? Basically a large warehouse. It's filled with IT hardware. Typically floor to ceiling racks that contain computer servers that themselves contain advanced technologies like high performance microchips like GPUs and TPUs that each contain hundreds of billions of transistors, which I just find fascinating every time I try to understand what these little chips are, and I don't. The point is, though, they require a tremendous amount of power when they're operational. And that power, massive power, is necessary for large scale model training and inference for AI. So you need a lot of power to operate them. And when they're operational, the computer hardware, they generate a lot of heat. So they have to be cooled. So
you couldn't do district heat with.
actually, there are some proposals. I looked at other states that try to use the waste heat.
Yeah.
So
No.
So yeah.
Anything else?
So just to kind of just more context. So for a 20 megawatt data center, and I'm using that threshold because that's the minimum threshold.
We have two, I've been told.
You have kind of the traditional data centers.
Yeah,
There are in Vermont. I always forget how many there are. There are 4, there are 5.
okay, there's some.
But we're talking about here AI data centers that have the capacity to use 20 megawatts of power pretty continuously. The traditional data centers, all of them in Vermont, use about half of 1 megawatt. So they're very, they do
Very different.
cloud services, web hosting, but
Not
nothing
saying-
like
not
the
saying.
artificial intelligence training and inference. So just getting back to what the power energy requirements are for, again, the minimum threshold that would trigger this bill is 20 megawatts. That is about enough power to serve 20,000 households. So one data center that meets the minimum here would be 20,000
And
households.
that's a day.
And they use, because they're operational pretty much 24/7. I don't know how much variability there is.
20,000 households is maybe
20 megawatts.
Burlington.
Use a kilowatt per household.
Okay. And then, so in terms of the cooling, of the microchips, there are several alternatives and it's an area that is advancing in terms of technology. If you use water, just an open loop system, evaporative system, could potentially use again for just the minimum 20 megawatt facility, about 500,000 gallons a day, which is about how much 1,500 households use a day. However, there are other systems. There's a closed loop system, which just circulates coolant that has a refrigerant added to it. And then there are other dry cooling, immersion cooling, other systems. Point being that depending on what you use, you could have a major impact on the water supply in an area or not. Some of the other systems, I'll get into this a little bit more, but if you did use like a closed loop, you didn't use hardly any water, that would require a lot more power. So there are trade-offs and things to think about. So the power, potentially the water, and those are the two big issues that are addressed in this bill. The land, just to give you some idea, of 20 megawatt facility might be on land that's a minimum of 10 acres, usually between 10 and 40 acres is the range that I found. And the facility itself, to give you an idea of the size, up to 100,000 square feet, about the size of 2 football fields together, 2.5 acres.
And I assume that this huge warehouse for machines, unlike other huge warehouses for things that require people to move things in, out, up, down, that they would not have a lot of employees.
I think that's generally the case, so I'm not sure, when people talk about job opportunities, it's mostly in the construction phase, development,
One
construction.
and done.
Operationally, I don't think there are a lot of full-time employees. Obviously, there are some, but it's mostly the warehouse is filled with technology that's just making sure it's maintained and running.
And no one has asked for one here, yeah.
Not that I can. So some of the kind of pros of data center people talk about is potential revenue to the state, increased revenue or upgraded infrastructure, electric to the water. Some of the concerns are what I mentioned, the environmental impact, the power demand on the grid, so the resiliency and reliability of the grid, and also protecting other ratepayers from paying some of those costs that may be necessary to upgrade the systems. Social equity, that came up in the context where they're cited, actually. So that's a very big picture. So we'll get into the bill itself. And as I mentioned, the first 2 sections deal with the energy, the power, utility service falls under the jurisdiction of the Public Utility Commission. So that's what we'll look at first. And as I mentioned, the next 2 sections have to do with the environmental impact. So, and then the final sections are some reporting back on some issues, which we'll talk about when we get there. So section 1, this creates a new subchapter in Title 30. This subchapter may be known as the Vermont Sustainable Data Centers Act. And I'll just read the purpose because it helps to explain some of the goals here. Purpose of the subchapter is to establish a regulatory framework that ensures responsible growth of an emerging industry in a manner that protects existing electric ratepayers from unwarranted costs and promotes sustainable climate, environmental, community, and equity outcomes consistent with state policies. So again, the threshold, what a data center is for purposes of this subchapter, it's a facility that uses or is able to use 20 megawatts or more power. To put this in further context, when you talk about like the hyperscale data centers, usually I have yet to find specific, agreed upon industry standards. Or maybe they just changed, but maybe 100 megawatts might be kind of people when they're talking about the hyperscale, but they go into the hundreds and now gigawatts. So we're relatively small here, although big impact on the small state, but just wanted you to be aware of that. And then, so a facility that is engaged in providing data processing, hosting, and related services as described under, and you'll see a classification code from the North American Industry Classification System. So this is the system that's prepared in part by the Office of Management and Budget, Federal Office, that basically classifies all the different sectors of the economy based on their primary purpose. And so that seems like a specific way of getting at these particular entities for purposes of this bill. And so facility for purposes of this subchapter means the buildings, equipment, structures, any other stationary items located on a single site or a contiguous or adjacent site, owned or operated by the same person or by any person that is controlled by, or is under common control of such person. So the bulk of the regulatory oversight in terms of the electric usage is contained in this next section, section 284, which concerns what are called large load service equity contracts. This is the contract between the data center and the electric distribution utility. Every data center is required to enter into such a contract, and it must comply with all of the requirements which I'm about to go through, and it must be approved by the Public Utility Commission. So in terms of, I'll just read you, for the purpose of ensuring just and reasonable rates for all ratepayer classes and mitigating the risk of financial exposure to electric distribution companies and their existing ratepayers, the data center shall be served by an electric company pursuant to a large load service equity contract approved by the PUC. So the requirements that must be met in the contract, 1, include a method for allocating costs that is equal or proportional to the cost of providing electric service to the data center, including providing for equitable contributions to the embedded costs, so the existing infrastructure and maintenance of that infrastructure, for example, and the efficiency, reliability, and resiliency of the electricity network, so the broader distribution transmission network. 2, mitigate the risk of other ratepayer classes paying unwarranted costs, including any electric generation, distribution, and transmission infrastructure costs incurred to meet the load requirements of a data center, or the energy capacity, transmission, or resource adequacy costs incurred as a result of the data center's load. So that last part would be some of the operational costs of managing the grid and ensuring that the voltage and frequency is appropriately managed, particularly with this new large load system. 3, the contract shall specify its duration and the date or the estimated date that the electric company will begin to provide service to the data center. 4, obligate the data center to pay a minimum amount or percentage based on the data center's projected electricity usage for the duration of the contract to ensure compliance with subdivision 1. So to ensure that they are responsible for the costs that they're generating. 5, include a reasonable charge for demand in excess of the data center's projected electricity demand at the time the contract is entered into. Include a collateral requirement sufficient to mitigate the risk of stranded costs. So if the data center ceased operations, that there would still be financial protection since that revenue wouldn't be coming in, which is normally when you recover the costs of an infrastructure investment or upgrade. This would basically say there needs to be some kind of financial instrument that would protect the utility and the other ratepayers if a business ceased operations. 7, include provisions requiring implementation of demand-side management operational measures for the purpose of maintaining grid stability and efficiency, including demand response and flexible load management practices, such as load shifting, peak shaving, and the use of distributed energy resources. So distributed energy resources would include on-site generation. If any, it would also include storage, the use of battery storage, or backup diesel generators. But basically what this is getting at, demand response, being able to respond if there's an emergency, maybe to go off the drawing from the grid. Flexible load management is more kind of strategic grid optimization on an ongoing basis. So it might be, certain peak hours, shifting. Right, to the extent you're able to, shift to your own storage or on-site generation.
You don't want to have to buy high cost electricity off the grid.
Also include provisions for the collection of gross receipts, taxes, energy efficiency charges, and other fees or charges that may be applicable to electricity revenues. So these are not new taxes or fees. The gross receipts tax, all utilities pay. It's a portion of their operational revenue. It's not really a tax, it's a fee. It goes towards the costs of regulating. So PUC and the department, they share a portion of that revenue yet to pay for their regulatory costs. And you're all familiar with the energy efficiency charge that are on everybody's electric bill. They would be required to pay those charges, and then if there are any other fees or charges under existing law, again, there are no new fees or charges proposed here. And then a catch-all provision meet any other terms or conditions required by the PUC that are consistent with the purpose of this section and in the public interest. So subsection C on page 4 is basically saying that the commission shall not approve the contract unless it finds that the same will promote the general good of the state. And then to kind of assist with ensuring that that's the case, subsection D says that before approving the contract, the commission shall find that the terms of the contract, and then there are a number of specific findings that must be made. For example, number 1, will not adversely affect the efficiency, reliability, and resilience of the electric power system. Will result in an economic benefit to the state and its residents. Are consistent with the principles for resource selection expressed in the applicable electric distribution company's approved least cost integrated plan. These are plans that must be submitted by electric utilities every 3 years, I think. Where they basically try to balance supply with demand in a affordable way, kind of the least cost way, while also meeting state's environmental goals. But they are intended to make sure that the utilities are operating in a way that protects ratepayers and also, sorry to interrupt.
What is the
Is there a definition of economic benefit and will that, whatever that amount or number or, whatever it is, to take into consideration the energy that was spent, the cooling and the water and all of that?
Yeah, it's a good question. There isn't a definition.
Okay.
So without a definition, it's you kind of leaving it up to the PUC to kind of
Right.
take into consideration the various factors. You could be more specific if you want to ensure that there's a proper balancing of.
Okay.
Well, there's foregone opportunities. If we lose it all here, we don't have the opportunity to use that water and power for something else.
Right. And is there any provision in here about decommissioning the?
Yes,
Okay.
those that did come up, and what House Energy determined, and also House Environment, which didn't have possession of the bill, but looked at it and particularly weighed in on the Act 250 water permitting stuff. Is that there aren't sufficient in existing regulations for decommissioning. So you'll see, I think it might be the very last section, is the asking the department to come back with a recommendation on that bunch of projects. So that recommendation will come back this year, in December. Number 4 are consistent with the electrical energy plan approved by the department, or that there existed a cause to permit a variance. So this is the annual plan. I think it's an annual plan that the department prepares, which is ultimately integrated into the comprehensive energy plan that the state prepares, and again, trying to ensure that the state is meeting its goals with respect to renewables and emissions, et cetera. So then 5 will ensure that the data center will be served economically by existing or planned transmission facilities without undue adverse effect on Vermont utilities or other retail ratepayer classes, and are consistent with environmental justice and equity policy as established under Vermont law. So then subsection E basically states that a data center shall not be eligible to participate in an energy savings account or a customer credit program pursuant to Vermont law, or a self-managed energy efficiency program pursuant to Vermont law. So these are entities that do not pay the energy efficiency charge. They basically retain the money, but they can then self-manage their own plan, or they can set up accounts where that money goes towards efficiency. Data centers are not allowed to participate in those programs.
So they're going to pay a significant efficiency charge. Unless they're generating their own, right?
That's true. If they have kind of behind the meter, what that's called, they have their own on-site generation facilities. Okay. So then there is a requirement in section 285 regarding the energy efficiency design that specifies that early in the design development phase, suggestion to be a little bit more specific about what that means. But in any event, the owner or operator of the data center shall consult with the efficiency utility appointed by the PUC, Efficiency Vermont, is the entity that's being referred to ensure compliance with state energy efficiency requirements and best practices. So there are, as you know, commercial building energy standards, in law, and as well as other best practices that might be applicable. So that there's some consultation in the design phase. And then there are report requirements, quarterly reports by the data centers. So within 3 months of becoming operational, the data center shall begin submitting quarterly reports to the PUC and the Department of Public Service, and those reports shall include the data center's water and energy usage, including its peak usage per day, and an itemization of the data center's payments toward shared infrastructure constructed to support the data center. And then the department, beginning in January of 2028, if there is a data center, or at least one data center, operating pursuant to large load equity contract, the commissioner shall include in its annual report, energy report, findings and recommendations related to the energy, environmental, and economic impacts of data center construction and operation in Vermont, as well as any impactful developments within the region, including any benefits to all ratepayers from electric infrastructure projects undertaken to provide power to one or more data centers. So that's report would come to you. And section 287 is just rulemaking authority to the PUC as it deems necessary to implement these provisions. The application section for this subchapter will apply to any data center that's not operational on the effective date of this act, as well as to any data centers that are operational. As I mentioned, they're very small ones, to the extent they wanted to expand their capacity and meet this threshold.
20 megawatt.
Right, so, and so then we get to the environmental sections, section 3, all section 3 is, a very short section, that has broad implications because it basically is the trigger. It's defining what development means under Act 250 to include the construction of improvements on a tract or tracts of land for a data center as defined in the previous section. So these new facilities would be subject to Act 250 review and all of Act 250 criteria. In addition, there are new requirements under that Act 250 review specific to water use if they're using water to cool the IT hardware. And I'm not going to go through this in great detail. Michael O'Grady is our water expert and permitting expert. To the extent you want to get into the nitty gritty, you should definitely hear from him. I will just say a couple of things in here. There is a preference if a data center is going to use water that it used a closed loop system, if that's feasible, because it's not using a lot of water. That to the extent they apply any groundwater, any withdrawal permits and discharge permits, there is a requirement that if there is a discharge of water, that it has a plan in place for monitoring any PFAS in the water, and ensuring that they're prohibited from adding PFAS to any water that's discharged, so that they would have to have in place a means for filtering and containing any PFAS before it's discharged. But other than that, there are some very specific requirements that need to be met under the permitting, which again, if you want to get into the detail, you should probably hear from Mike O'Grady. I know that House Senate Energy and Natural Resources is looking pretty closely at these.
Yes,
and the
I
water
know.
permitting sections.
Senate Natural Resources would actually like this bill.
They have the version of the bill, or you have that here?
We have possession.
You walked through it with us. I was like, this is all deja.
No, I walked through with you in energy
And
and natural
natural
resources.
They're
Yeah,
looking
oh,
at it.
because I started there, I assumed that they had possession.
No,
I'm sorry,
They have-
okay, so we know.
Confusing to me too. I was like,
Okay.
they would like possession.
Sorry,
You walk through the Senate bill.
I walked,
yes.
well, I walked this Senate bill here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I walked through this bill,
There.
then in energy, and I thought that
Yes.
they had possession,
So
you have possession, got it,
There.
okay.
we can look at it. All the utility stuff is probably ours. And then we can send it with our report intact. to them if they can continue to do.
I don't know, we wanted stuff. The Senate bill was a ban on
The
this.
Senate bill
Right.
was a
And then
ban,
not.
and we knew this one was
Moratorium.
coming.
It was
Moratorium.
moratorium, temporary moratorium.
And then it just said you'll do all of this stuff very generally. This one has had time, since they have all day to get it fleshed out, so we're gonna take a look at this.
That's
And then we can decide what we wanna do.
to answer Senator's question. I mean, I think if they can fit into a regulatory structure that works and the utilities have to actually have the power to give them, then, you know,
I think you guys should look at it for sure.
it's a big.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already are, so we walked through it, and I was like, I feel like I'm through this bill already.
You should have, we have it. So let's finish this up and then we can discuss both of them.
Okay, so there are only two more sections. Section 5 is a report that's prepared by the PUC, which you would receive on or before January 15th of 2027. And it's basically a report on the market conditions for renewable electric generation. And then the final substantive section has to do with decommissioning. So this is a recommendation. It would come from the Commissioner of Public Service in consultation with the Secretary of Natural Resources, the Chair of the Land Use Review Board, and any other interested stakeholders deemed appropriate by the Commissioner. And that recommendation shall be for a regulatory model for data center decommissioning. And then it just defines data center as we've been using that term. And so the recommended model developed pursuant to this section shall ensure responsible data center decommissioning in a manner that protects and preserves the environment and the public health and welfare. And the model shall include standards and procedures that address: 1, approval of the decommissioning plan by the appropriate regulatory entity; 2, regulatory oversight of the decommissioning process, including through site visits and inspections; 3, bond requirement or other financial assurance to ensure a data center is solely responsible for the costs associated with implementation of an approved decommissioning plan; 4, guidelines for data sanitization, the physical destruction of highly sensitive storage devices as a documented chain of custody for information technology assets. So all data is wiped from any of the infrastructure and cannot be recovered. 5, guidelines for environmental compliance, hazardous material handling, environmental remediation, and site restoration. 6, a timeline for commencing and completing the decommissioning process after the abandonment, closure, destruction, or permanent cessation of operations of the data center, and any other matters deemed appropriate by the Commissioner. And as I mentioned, that report is due this year, December 15th. And it will come to this committee among others. There was something else I was going, just so you're aware, because I actually can't remember under the Senate proposal. But under this bill's introduced, initially the siting requirements also were with the PUC. There wasn't the Act 250 jurisdiction, so it was modeled much more like Section 248A and 248. So citing a telecom, citing for new generation facilities, which, themselves incorporate some of the Act 250 review and the municipal review.
This is a whole different thing than cell town.
Oh, this is definitely a whole different thing. But I just wanted you to be aware of that model that was considered, but ultimately House Energy opted to not have any citing environmental issues through the PUC. They focused just on mostly the power and then the environmental stuff through.
Okay. Activity.
That is it. This would be effective on passage.
Okay. So committee. When you have a chance to catch your breath, go through this and see if there are sections that you feel we really should deal with. I'm looking at the grid in the power and transmission. That is generally in our area. The environmental impact, water, would generally be in natural resources, so. We'll sit down with a marker and see where we wanna land on this one.
I'll just follow up what I said earlier. I just think that if we're gonna open this floodgate, so to speak, that we make sure this is a real huge economic benefit to the state. So I think defining that piece about economic benefit would be helpful. And I think you have to weigh the environmental costs and the power costs and all of that.
Yeah,
But you guys could do that.
maybe,
Yeah, we do need a committee. Yeah.
yeah,
Both.
the electric, environmental would be next door. It'll just take a while to sift this out. We'll work, come to a great bill. Okay. James, you have a fiscal? No?
I do, and
Okay.
it should be quick, Madam Chair.
Okay. That's okay. We've only got 2 more bills and I have a 4:15 meeting, so we're in really good shape.
Hello, everyone. James Nutley, Joint Fiscal Office. There is a fiscal note posted on the committee page for this bill for your reference. The fiscal implications of this bill are minimal from Joint Fiscal Office's point of view. I'll start by saying that the bill does not appropriate funds or raise new state revenue or establish new permits or fees. There are several agencies and departments within the state that would be charged with examining permit applications, specifically at the Agency of Natural Resources and within the Land Use Review Board for data centers under this bill as they're defined in this bill. Jim has been in touch with both of those agencies. They anticipate that both of those, that these permits would fit easily into the existing permit review and volume workflows of their agencies as they currently stand. So they don't anticipate extra costs from reviewing these permit applications. I will just note that given the potential fee paid by these data centers to the Land Use Review Board, the magnitude of that maximum fee amount, which is $165,000, would be the maximum fee paid for a construction permit under Act 250. Again, that's the maximum. It's a tiered fee structure, but the maximum would be $165 per application. Would be a significant increase in revenue for the receiving special fund that receives Act 250 permit fee
I'm
revenue.
just wondering, looking at the magnitude of this, if that's enough.
Yeah. It's special for data.
I don't think we.
Oh, there's no special fee. Let me clarify then. So there's no special.
Oh,
fee
no,
for
I'm
this.
just looking, that's the, I'm just wondering if giving the environmental impact and potential, if that would really cover the level
Thank you.
of investigation would be necessary. I'm probably more concerned about the PUC because water is water unless they're going to move it in from out of state. But electricity is hooked to the grid and we don't generate enough, we've got to buy it and there's more and less expensive, which will impact everyone's rates. That one's going to be really complex.
Water's easy as long as it's close to.
Yeah.
It's overload. I mean, where do you get it? And now you're putting hot water back into the environment where it's normally temperature.
Yeah.
Into the ground cooler, right? Well, you could do ground cooling, but that'd be close. Well, I guess you could pump it in the ground, but again, you gotta go through DEC for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
You take water through machinery, you put it back into the environment, you go into the DEC.
yeah, oh, yeah.
And there are people running along sidewalks to melt the ice in the
I'm
water.
all for that. That's it.
The roads, that's what we could do.
Yeah.
All right.
I would certainly encourage the committee to invite the PUC to hear more if you'd like to dig in more. I will just note that I was in touch with Chair McNamara at the PUC about this bill, and he did not flag additional concerns about their ability to absorb their involvement in
Their
this bill under
testimony.
existing staff levels.
The Senate bill was. They had the power to stop anyone from using too much electricity. So. But I'd like to be sure of that since this is a new. Experiment and it could have wide ranging impact on. Everyone else's rates. So make sure we. Do look at this. Okay.
Right, and those are good questions. One more note on permit and permit fee revenue. I'll just note that both of the implicated agencies for permit review, the Land Use Review Board and ANR, indicated that these would fit under existing permit structures. The ANR has commercial permits that this would likely fall under. The only other piece that I will note for the committee, and this is of less interest to your jurisdiction, but from the kind of appropriations and agency staffing demands point of view, generally agencies indicated they had sufficient staffing to meet the directives of this bill. Two exceptions to that were that the Public Service Department had testified in favor of a $50,000 appropriation to support their involvement with the decommissioning task force. That is contemplated, I believe, in section 5 or 6. And additionally, the Agency of Natural Resources flagged that their involvement in reviewing PFAS data and monitoring submissions from regulated data centers would be a significant administrative burden from their point of view that may require additional resources.
And maybe we could deal with those appropriations when we actually have a project that wants to come here. Which may or may not happen. There are probably easier states to cite these in.
And I had two people thought we'd be higher in, but they're both 1 megawatt or less. I think there's lots of those.
Yeah,
These bigger ones though are,
the smaller ones that we
Yeah.
can have. Okay. All right. So some agencies would need some money to regulate once something showed up. That, okay,
That was ANR's addition to the discussion, particularly around PFAS monitoring.
yeah. Yeah, okay. Say that, it's going to land up in health and welfare.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah. Committee, we're going on. To. Helen and H710. And after relating to defining electricity generating facilities. And I believe this is the other one that natural resources taken this one up. They're already.
I don't remember.
They
So
have-
we-
no.
She had a walk around.
They have two they might like to take. And it might be, no, I think it's 9:40. That's the next, that's one after this, okay.
LJ Kazmia from Office of Legislative Council. So I was here on Friday with you all on 7:10 and you heard from the PUC.
Okay, that's right. So refresh our memories in about 5 minutes, because that was Friday,
I wasn't here.
and Senator Hardy wasn't here. 2 minute, 30,000. Oh, this is the one with decommissioning.
So just to clarify, this bill has one topic and it's just amending the definition of plant as used to define renewable energy facilities. It is only for renewable programs, net metering, standard offer, and tier
That's
programs.
right.
They have
Roads
pitched,
and driveways. driveway.
Yes, shared infrastructure versus
Yes,
separate infrastructure. The PUC pitched a separate idea they would also like to be added to this bill, but it is not in this bill. That is regarding their authority for decommissioning.
okay, that we took a fair amount of testimony on. This one,
It's just the definition. Last year, issues regarding the exact definition of plant have come up over the years and been litigated. Last year, in one of the bills, you asked PUC to meet with the stakeholders and provide a suggested updated.
and this is their suggestion.
Yes.
Okay. And this one,
It's a very narrow issue.
it is, so if you have one road that runs, one driveway between two plants, it could count as one, right? You don't have to have a separate drive, or counts as two.
Yes.
If it's done at different times, you wouldn't have to put in a separate road and a separate power transmission line, which would save everybody time. Yes, okay,
Is the point, can I just ask?
Yes.
Is H 940?
No, each seven's tangent. So
I was like, okay, this is not looking.
940, I think, is the next one. Yes, that's natural resources.
Yes, that has a couple paragraphs in it that are overlapping with 325.
Yes. Okay, so let's go on to 940. I think 710 we can keep. All right, maybe vote out. All right,
So H 940, which we also briefly talked about on Friday night,
yes.
is the miscellaneous bill from House Energy. It has 3 topics in it. Amending the authority to use thermal process funds temporarily for Burlington Electric Department. Burlington Electric Department gets these funds every 3 years, and they have a specific defined set of things they can use them on, but because of their overlapping jurisdiction with Vermont Gas Systems, they would like to be able to use this funds for something else, slightly more than they currently are used for,
Okay,
including transportation programs and geothermal test wells.
okay, I remember that.
And it is a 3-year extension. They have previously been doing this under a pilot program for 6 years. They would like to.
Yeah, do get just out, we heard about that economic development, I think.
That is I think it's a different pilot.
Different one, all right,
Oh my gosh.
okay.
I'm sorry if you said this on Friday, I don't remember. Where are these funds coming from? And that probably is why we bought them into a certain format.
Yes, the thermal energy and process fuel efficiency funds come from the sale of RGGI credits, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative credits, as well as the savings awarded in the forward capacity market bidding. So ISO New England has their annual auction. Vermont regularly bids in negative amounts. They bid in savings. Because of that, we get a chunk of money every year from the grid because of the amount of efficiency we can provide.
This was the thing we were told we were crazy, they would never agree to, and this committee set it down. And they agreed, if you don't use electricity, work on efficiency, then the grid saves because the grid doesn't have to build more generation and more transition money. Transmission. So we get that, we get a payment. And that goes into the thermal.
Yes.
The electric charges can only be used for electric efficiency.
Yes, so the electric efficiency charge on your electric bill is a different pot of funds. And so the thermal funds have a limited use, largely weatherization. So the proposal still requires them to use at least 60% of those funds on weatherization, but does allow them to use the rest of the funds on other projects that might not already qualify.
Comments tonight? I'll get into these.
I need fuel for
Oh,
this.
those are, it's community fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry,
We're
Ellen.
gonna get
No
out of here.
offense. I'm just like, which bill are we on? What did we do?
So there are a lot of energy bills
Yes.
with a lot of similar
Numbers, anyone else?
Yes.
if I remember correctly, Burlington Electric had some charging stations they were putting up with a
They do some of that, but they also offer an incentive for electric vehicle
Yeah.
purchase.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's what they were using the money on, and this bill would allow them,
Yes. And a limited portion of it can be used.
this would allow them to do more.
Some more, yes.
Some more. Okay,
Close the budget gap.
all right, let's keep going.
The last section of this bill, section 5, is the section that repeals the telecommunications advisory board, which hasn't met since 2021.
That was the thing I knew we had to do. That, yes,
And then the sections in between 2, 3, 4 are about updating the enhanced energy planning process for regional planning commissions and municipalities so that it is more streamlined into the land use review board approval process.
which is why natural resources would like this. So we could say yes to section 1. And yes, no, or maybe to the last section. And send this bill over to natural resources with the report of the committee on finance intact. Which shouldn't take us very long. We'll maybe put this on for vote if you can draft us something unless someone would like. Probably should hear from Burlington Electric.
I was gonna say, have we heard from them yet?
No, they're scheduled for Wednesday along with the Public Service Department
Wait, isn't this Wednesday?
next Wednesday.
Oh, next Wednesday.
There's another one next week.
We're gonna have to start tightening things up to get them out of here. So that I would like if we can tell them it's coming. Data centers, I think we ought to take a shot at that, then release it to natural resources to look at the money, the water planning conservation section. And then
Was that, you do want to fix that?
I think 710 is ours. The 727 is the data centers.
Yeah.
And we need to look at impact on the grid and rates for everybody else and I'm still trying to figure out if it's not much in employment. I guess some town, and therefore the education fund would get some property tax increases. And I don't know how people, I know from what I've read, other states have given them like no property taxes. They've given them all kinds of tax breaks, which they are now
Trying to call that.
they're regretting. Because they do have impacts, and if they aren't putting in the 200 employees that another kind of building of a similar size could do, and they're putting in 20 just to walk around, make sure the machines are running. We may want to look at that too. So that one, we will take more testimony on 727. We will maybe vote out 710. We'll see if Burlington Electric can zoom in sooner. If they can zoom in looking for that
9:40.
Friday.
9:40. 9:40.
9:40 is, yes, no.
7:10 is the plan.
7:10 is, okay, that's silly, that one we can do. And then 9:40, if we get Burlington Electric to come talk to us. We can probably do our section of that bill and move that. Okay, so let's see if we can, how soon can they,
We don't really have space. That's the problem.
let's see. Like Friday at 1. That's what I'm saying. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See if
What's
they
that?
can come in at 3 o'clock on Friday. It shouldn't take more than a half an hour. These guys aren't. No, they. Yeah. They don't.
Okay.
Yeah, let's. Cause we have. Next week, I'd like to vote out the DFR bill, and we need. To, we have a big education financing. Fee money. Bill. There, I don't know what is coming out of transportation. But I know they're looking for funding. And I know they're looking at the purchase and use tax. Which will take 10, well, it's 10 million the first year and an additional 10 million every year. Out of the ed fund. They need it, we need it, but that will be coming over here eventually if they do it. Plus, I don't think miscellaneous tax has a lot in it that's overly controversial. He's going through it with the tax department. But I think the only thing the House added was decoupling the corporate tax so we don't lose $25 million that the governor figured we had when he did his budget, and the House we had when they did their budget. So that'll take us a while to go through, but I'm not going to release that until we're all finished. But we can have that one ready to go. So we will see. 898. Natural resources doesn't want that one. Huh? That one we will go through. And hopefully it'll be a little less painful than the last time we dealt with this issue. So that, I think, is it. If anyone think about all of that, look at the bills, let me know what you'd like to go through, you know, if any of that doesn't work for you. That is,
This is apropos of an earlier bill we did today, but can we hear more about these association health plans, or are you guys all experts enough?
no, we can hear about, they're here.
Okay,
And we will have VFR talk to us. They basically, as somebody came in and said it's GoFundMe for health insurance. It's like you all agreed that you all will chip in and pay for each other's healthcare.
right, it was like one of the four.
But there's no state regulation, there's no requirement. I just looked at the first page of this Colorado, and it's on our website. They've got associations with 174 people in them. That's a very small insurance pool. And
I was just surprised that a lot of the testimony today was really in favor of those, and
not here.
the association health plans, you might be thinking.
Oh,
something else.
association
Yeah.
health plan.
Yeah.
I'm thinking healthcare.
Yeah, no.
Association. Okay, we will get a 101 on health association, and that should come from, who's our, Jen, I think, Jeremy, yeah, and maybe DFR and see if we can get association health plans one-on-one. The Chamber of Commerce used to be pretty much it. Every small business in the state joined the chamber, and they, because they had so many members, were able to join the large pool. And large pool has, we don't regulate what their plans have to offer, so they could cut out things that other plans have to cover. They get a better rate because they're bigger pool, their morbidity is better. Which means how much they use it, not how much they die, right? So we will, yeah, we could do that. It was out, they were outlawed by Obamacare because the goal was to get everybody on the exchange. So they said no. Trump one came back in and basically said, you could join a Chamber of Commerce thing in California if you wanted. I mean, it was pretty wide open. We took a lot of testimony. Basically what it's like, no, basically we stranded this independent, the small individual market. We're facing a very painful decision as to who we hurt, the small businesses or the independents. And the federal government came back and said, no, we've changed our mind. It'll only be in a very limited circumstance. That's where we are now. But they have been saying they're going to allow them again. So we're now talking about, will we allow them and under what circumstances? So it's a health insurance pool.
Right.
It works for small employers. It doesn't work for the individual market because it strands them.
Right. Can I just recap what I
Yes.
think you said about these bills?
Yes.
So for
Ariel.
H7, it's okay, but for eight, I just want to make sure that you are not asking me at the moment for any amendments.
I think I asked for one.
There was something about the PUC wanting to have the decommissioning.
Okay, so the Public Utility Commission has asked about adding decommissioning authority into
Yes.
H710. Are you interested in doing that?
Are we interested in
Decommissioning of what?
doing that?
Solar.
So
Primarily solar panels, but also.
And I
other,
think there's
facilities.
discussions going on and there may be a solution. So before we ask you to draft anything, let's let the industry and the PUC work on that. So we will sit on that one for a little while.
Okay, and then for,
Till next week.
and then 940, you're gonna try to get Burlington Electric and the department in,
Yes,
and then try to power.
and it was generating, which we had to do away with the commission that hasn't met in 5
Yes, the
years.
telecommunications advisory board is
Yes.
also in there. Yep,
That is in 710, right?
940.
940, okay. That's the one section there we need to do, and the first section,
Burlington Electric. and-
Burlington Electric, so we will have Burlington Electric in. And, that was the two. Well, doing away with that board was the amendment I asked you to do. Whatever,
But it's already in there.
Yes.
So I don't,
it is in there,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
So
I think you're just
we
waiting
will-
on testimony.
we will hear from them, then we will release this next door. Once we hear from the PUC and probably the utilities, maybe Pepsi,
I don't remember any other amendment talk though, do you?
no, that was the two, that was the one thing that was really easy to do, and we'll get that released. electric generating facility is in the works, and then we will start working on data centers, and it sounds like next door is working on data centers, and at some point we'll merge the two. That work? Okay, that gives you what you need. Okay.